evening, everyone. We have our speakers in the house, and I think particularly for today, I'm very, very excited. Again, this is a conversation that we've all been looking forward to. I hope you can hear me. There's this thunder storm that's going on in Lagos, and there's a lot of noise in the background. But I'll try as much as possible to ensure that I'm audible. We have very special people in the house that are going to be again driving this conversation for us this afternoon. And who wins in the AI age? Cultural algorithms. Right? Um, we have Stella in the room. Hi, Stella. Um, Obina, Amanda. I'll just again give everyone 30 seconds to just give us a full, just short briefing on what you've done, who you are, and just walk us through this conversation quickly. I'll start with Stella.
Okay, thank you so much for having me. You can hear me clearly, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so my name is Stella Soribe. I'm currently building Aradai Studios, is an AI native video production agency, and our focus are Africans building for Africa by an African. So, basically, what we do is we create AI videos for corporate organizations and even, AI films. I'm currently working on my first AI film, and yeah, I'm excited to be here.
I think how did I come across? I think we came across Stella from X Twitter, right? I saw some clips and I said, "Oh, this is
Yeah,
amazing work being done."
yeah,
Thank you,
I'm
Stella,
pretty
for
active
being
on
here.
there.
Yes, she has. She's building a studio, trying to use using AI, not trying to use using AI to create stories, build narratives. So excited to have you here. You are supposed to represent our entrepreneur side, right? We try as much as possible in this conversation to bring different perspectives to the conversation.
Hmm.
Hi, Obina. Can you hear us?
Hey,
Are
I can
you?
hear you.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Obino Kirikocha. So I like to describe myself as an artist, a composer, filmmaker, one-time creative director. I'm just an all-round creative adventure seeker. I started my career in advertising in 2005. Worked for two ad agencies, McCann Erickson and Lintas, and then segued at some point into 24 hours television, working for NN24. Was an affiliate of CNN at the time, and then I moved into the world of branding and communications, worked for an oil company at the time. And then I went to work for the Tony Elumelu Foundation as a brand programs manager, and did that for a while. It was great because we had just started the $100 million Tony Elumelu Entrepreneurship Foundation project at the time. So I was sort of like a pioneer in that, working on the team for that. And then I segued into what I really love to do. And this was around 2014, 2015, when content marketing was becoming a big thing. So I used to be creative director at Red TV. We started it at the time, and then with hit shows like The Men's Club, Assistant Madams, and a bunch of other ones. Did that for about 7 years, and now I work at MoneyPoint. I head content marketing at MoneyPoint. But beyond that, I'm somebody who's always been driven by technology. I have an artistic training and background, so that is sort of forayed, gotten me to dabble into storytelling forms. From photography, videography, music composition, and now artificial intelligence. I think that when this whole thing started, I was one of the few people who were pretty much in that mix. Like 4 or 5 years ago, I started to use Me Journey, and in probably less than 3 months, I had done 1,000 images. So I pretty much was pretty much jumped into the deep end, and then Runway came out. And so last year I started something really crazy. I started the first AI film festival in this part of the world. It was, so the Niger AI Film Festival. I started that. We had our first festival last year. We had 490 submissions. We had it at the Alliance Francaise. We're planning, AI Africa 2 this year. And currently we have almost 1,000 submissions. We've built a community of over 700 AI enthusiasts, filmmakers, and creators from across the continent. So, Amanda, it would be great to have you join the community. of filmmakers doing some really amazing work. I'm a creative partner with Runway. We had a second Runway meetup last year in Nigeria, in Africa, hosted that last year. I'm also a creative partner for Dreamina AI, the guys who do sit dance, yeah, owned by ByteDance essentially. So yeah, it's great. So for me, it's I'm always looking for new ways of telling stories. I'm always looking for technology that helps us advance that. And for me, the other thing is really bringing together a community of creatives for the common good. And then for me, I think it's really around, the what is the future of African storytelling is at the intersection of art and technology. So thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Bina. Again, for you particularly, of course, I've seen you a couple of times and sort of know you through some mutuals, right? But I was very excited to see. I think that was last year as well. The Niger AI Festival. I just knew that somehow, if we had an AI conversation, I wanted you to be there, to be able to share learnings, be able to share what you're building as well, for the community. I think it's important in this part of the world that we don't take ourselves out of the conversation, right? Something we can do. We have the talent and we're smart enough, right? So I was very excited to see that it was a festival, and you have a huge community already, 700, right? Um, Thank you for
Even
joining
ask
the
even
call.
even ask
Hi, Amanda.
myself, how did we get there? Thank you.
Hi.
Yes, we should talk about this on the call. Yes. Hi, Amanda.
Hi. Good afternoon. Good evening. It feels like a setup going after Obi now because that was something. It just feels like you all have set me up. That just allow me go before him and we wrap up with him. You know. Wow. Try my best. Hi everyone. My name is Amanda Zaba. More of the legal person here. By training, I'm an entertainment lawyer. I'm a lawyer that has picked the entertainment space to practice in. So I'm an entertainment lawyer. But prior to being an entertainment lawyer, I've been around the industry for a while and I've dabbled into different things within the creative space. I've been a TV presenter, I've done radio, I have tried to do my own show a couple of times. Not really much success there, but I tried. And all of that led me, I've also done PR, all of that led me to be in the entertainment space now as a lawyer. Currently, I work with Ndundo, which is a music service company, as head of licensing for Africa. And Ndundo primarily promotes and supports African music, tries to make it available across other African countries, and gives artists the platform to showcase themselves and monetize. But beyond that, I'm also involved in film industry. I'm very, very passionate about telling good stories and ensuring that we find the right, not just investment, but also platforms to push this story. On the AI front, I think my interaction with AI is more of a personal journey. And slowly now it's coming into my work because of how the music space and AI has come to interact with the entertainment industry. So primarily for me, it was a personal journey. Just playing around, it was very intriguing to see what AI could do with images, what AI could do with music and things like that. And somehow, it has become very, very serious now because all of a sudden we're not discussing protecting artists and their music. We're not discussing should actors have to interact, or sorry, actors have to compete with AI actors. We are not talking about is this a real content or is this an AI content. We're not talking about should they have
Mm.
AI music on platforms or not. So somehow they have decided to take out the fun part for me and bring our seriousness into it. So that is where me I then come in as a lawyer to try and advise my clients and better protect and just navigate this new space that we've been thrown into. But obviously, it's a space that has come to stay. So I'm very excited to be here. Beyond contributing, I'm also very, very excited to learn from each and everyone that is part of this conversation. I think this is a very timely conversation, and it's a conversation that each person needs to key in on because whether we like it or not, AI is here to stay. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Amanda, for that. Thank you to to three of you. Thank you for being here. Um, I think for Amanda, how did we? Yes, I think it was a conversation on just the music space, right? And then we're talking about the platform where you work and how AI is starting to affect some of the again the soul and the equity of the IPs there. We're talking about IP and AI, right? And so that was just bet that conversation bet this conversation for us as well. We even had to we wrote an article that we released was that earlier this week. A few things that we sort of came to saying how our artists thinking about and their teams thinking about catalog hygiene, right? What the platforms saying in the African market in terms of investing in detection infrastructure, right? Um, and then conversations from the investors, right? How are we framing this? Whether it's discovery or distribution, is there trust and verification? Again, I don't want to give. I'm hoping that at the end of this conversation, we have some takeaways, right, from all perspectives, and then people are able to just form their own views and then go along with it. But we'll start from the entrepreneur. Hi, Stella. You're still with us. Can you still hear me? So the first question will go to you so that we move as fast as possible. Um, First question is how can African creatives, again, you're on your own business, you're an entrepreneur, structure their businesses to ensure that AI is a catalyst? I know you really, your business, the core at the heart of it is AI, right? How do they structure and use AI as a growth catalyst rather than a replacement for cultural voice?
All right, thank you so much. So, one thing I want to say is that with the with AI being very very affordable, no, I wouldn't say affordable, being very accessible to the average person, the barrier to entry is super low right now. And one thing that I've noticed, not just as somebody that is building with AI, as a creative, is that so many people sound the same. We see so many regurgitated content out there, and it's not just exciting. Do you understand? So I believe that AI becomes dangerous when we make it the creative director instead of it assisting you. You have the story already. What AI is doing is that is making it is making that story is being able to be brought to life. The reason why so much content looks and sounds the same today is because people are outsourcing their originality to algorithms, what is trending, what is going viral, instead of the story that you can actually tell with it. So in the context of us being African creative, what what is our greatest asset is not even technology, is the cultural perspective that we have, the rich storytelling that we have. And and yeah, not everybody has the access to these tools, but what differentiates you or what differentiates us as African creatives is our stories, the language that we're telling, the history, the rich cultural history, and the lived experience that we have. Nobody can tell. I've said this thing before in the um, community, that nobody can tell African stories better than Africans, and that's why when I was starting Aradai Studios, I was trying to figure out who are my target audience. Even from a business perspective, naturally, everybody would want to target foreign clients, international clients, because the money is there and all that. But when I looked at it, I was like, I actually want to serve Africans. I actually want to tell African stories, and that's I actually want to do what I know, the experiences that I've lived through. And that was why we had to go back to the drawing board, because initially in the beginning it was just we didn't really have an ICP who fits our ideal client profile. We're just throwing spaghetti on the wall to see which one stick. Some stuck, but I wasn't really feeling fulfilled, because it was as though I was just living someone else's story, telling all these Western stories and all that. But when I had this conversation with my friend, he was saying, you are an African, you have experiences as an African. Why not lean into it? Why are you running away from it? And that made me just rethink every single thing, go back to the drawing board. And funny enough, the Westerners that we are looking at emulating, they actually want to see fresh content from another perspective. I've had conversations with people from the US and with a friend from the US, and he was like, you know what, we've seen a lot of Western Marvel type of content. We want to see something fresh. So if an African creative could own that space, that would really be great. So I feel like that's what we should be doing. And so if we want to scale authentically, we should, in terms of, business, what we can automate is just the production, but we should not, automate our identity. AI could handle, the repetitive tasks, while we as humans, we remain responsible for meaning, for the emotion and the culture. And that's one thing that we're trying as much as we can to do. That's how AI will become a catalyst for growth rather than, the replacement for our creative voice. So
Thank
yeah.
you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that, Stella, because I think that's something that is almost of our minds, right? When the AI conversation started as to how authentic, how will Africa play on this stage? What makes
Yeah.
sense for Africans, right? Some of the images we see online that we all know as AI generated images, are they reflective of us, right? This is just on the fun part. I saw some posts recently, person saying that now we can't even differentiate between a birthday post and a funeral post, right? The images from generated from AI all look the same. And that brings me to Obina. Sorry, Amanda, I'll
Yeah.
come. But that brings me to Obina, right? How, as you're building this community, how are we as founders in that community thinking about building that infrastructure, right? And then what admin or legal filters do we need to have in place, right? How are we thinking about it as a community of founders, as Nigerians, Africans, in the AI space? Can we really be authentic there? Can we differentiate ourselves in the global market?
Yeah, okay. Fee, and thanks. Great responses to Stella. So what I would say is I'm going to dimension the answer so that we understand the framing of the question and then we arrive at somewhere that's cohesive. So in terms of building infrastructure and then representation and then building some sort of legality around things, it's so I'm going to start from the beginning. So first of all, I need people to understand that. So what happens with AI is that so many people don't have an idea of what they think it is, and also they don't of what, and also what it is not. Like, if I cast your mind back now, artificial intelligence was coined in the 1950s, by a professor in like John, John, I can't remember his name now, his full name, but it was coined in the 1950s, and then in an English university, a professor, within the engineering science space. Now, I think that when it became really, I think maybe ChatGPT is like what 3 years, it's 2 3 years now. I think when OpenAI started as a company and then announced ChatGPT, I think that's when the real awakening. But for those people who have been within the STEM space, within the engineering space, AI has been something that has been front and has been, there, as like for instance, things like autocorrect in your WhatsApp, on your messaging tools and your email. That's artificial intelligence. A lot of people don't know this, so that it's been with us. I think the difference has become when it became commoditized as a product, and then we had to start to pay for it. And then companies like OpenAI started, and then we're like, oh my God, what's happening? This is this thing. And then the whole there's this whole tectonic shift, but it's been with us. I'm just trying to paint that picture. Now, what I would say is now the models that we interact with on a daily basis, whether it's Claude, Gemini, ChatGPT, whatever it is, these things started as research. And then companies were researching these things. Nobody knew how far they were going to go. There was like, okay, we need, and that's why they had access to a lot of data sets from large storage of what are multimedia assets, whether it's films, books, whatever it is. It was like, okay, donation. Let's see where it goes to. And then suddenly it works. It's something that you have this repository of data, and then you have access to it. And then it became commoditized, and we're like, okay, how do we now account for compensation? So you've trained with, let's say, for instance, you've gone to a publisher and you've donated 100,000 books. So what then happens? So I'll pack it aside. Now, what I'm trying to say is that a lot of the data sets that were used to train models, the LLMs, large language models, are based on Western, essentially based on Western, I won't say values, but a lot of Western information. So from films to Western music to Western literature, Western every. So basically, when you essentially, and let me use, for instance, let me use the generative models that generate images. So I think that drives home. If I say generate a boy walking down the street, it's going to give me a boy walking down the streets of London or a boy walking down the street of New York. You have to now modify your prompt to make it look African. So the truth is that none of all these data sets, essentially have any sort of African input. I give an example. They say that a lot of data, they have less than 3% or less than 5% of the data sets that need to train models are Africa. Everything is from the West. Predominantly, a large percentage of it is from the West. So what happens is that there's bias. There's that data bias where we're sort of secluded. So now you have to work extra hard to modify your prompts to make sure that it gives you what you want it to, in terms of the sort of results that you're looking for. So you have to work extra hard. So these are the issues. This is now where you have to sort of modify your prompt, and you sort of need to proper prompt engineering. So it's still something that is it's a journey. I know that we have there are some people who are trying to sort of buck that trend. My friend Malik Afegba, you guys know him, creator of the Elder series. Um he started this project where he was going around. He went to Ikorodu, was going around essentially recording a lost language. But then again, the thing is that within that data value chain, it's actually quite expensive. So you set out on a project, gather the data, clean up the data, tag the data, and then you have to put it out. Now, we don't have, like, data centers are things that really require, data centers are essentially large centers where you have GPUs, like servers. That's why there's a lot of angst in the world around people running, communities running out of water, because these data centers need to be cooled off because of all these GPUs. And essentially, there's a big supply chain issue around, chips, because essentially these chips that are used to make these computers, they are essentially getting scarce because a lot of them are consumed. So this is where we are. So now if you look at this and we notice the fact that there is really no African input, essentially, so it begs the question, where are we in the global, this global race, that kind of thing? We're really nowhere, because it takes a lot of infrastructure. Like, Elon Musk is not talking about building data centers in space. So it begs the question, where are we within that value chain? And that's why it's important that, we start to have these conversations at national level, because it's a big thing. Like, for instance, if you look at what's been happening with Claude and the Pentagon, the U.S. government, where they released Fable and I think Sonnet or so, and they had to call it back because of the amount of information that is providing. Now we're seeing AI used as tactical warfare, as something that it's now beyond just everyday use, but things. So we've gone from the arms race, from the Cold War of the last 70 years between the Russia and America, and probably China and the US, to now an AI arms race. So it's so if you look at it, and the thing about it is that AI is not going anywhere. It's become a huge fabric of our lives. Now, in terms of us here, I think it's, like I said, it really takes a lot of intentionality by government, because at the end of the day, it's a capital intensive. We have to spend money building data centers. Like, I give an example. Let me bring this home. Like, so if you look at, everybody has a Gmail account these days. So you set up a Gmail account, you automatically have access to YouTube, a YouTube account and stuff like that. I can tell you that a lot of the stuff that we upload, even on Instagram, Meta and all that stuff, we don't own them. I give an example. So what if some submarine cable cuts in the Atlantic and you don't have access to that? There's a time during the pandemic where people didn't have access to Instagram and Facebook for 6 hours, and there was only X, Twitter. There was a meltdown. So my point is that there is no ownership. So we do a lot of, generation, but we own nothing. And I think that the real challenge is, how much are we ready to invest as Africans, and not just Nigerians, as Africans, as African governments, in the ownership, building data centers, investing in GPUs, training data sets, that belong to us, that reflect us. Because the data is there. Arts and culture, we're talking today about, the algorithm versus culture. We have so much cultural nuance, so much cultural data sets, so much cultural information. The question is, how do we sit down and start to do the hard work of putting it together? I think this is where we are, because if that doesn't happen, we're all subservient. Like, I mean, I can tell you, in my community, we have guys who have built something called AI Studio.ng, which essentially is a Nigerian built, what they call a wrapper. So what is it called? An AI wrapper. An AI wrapper is essentially a model that takes APIs from other models. So you can access Kling, you can access Halo, you can access View, you can access Seedance, all in that. So it's Nigerians have built it, a guy called Afam in our community. But then again, he has to pay for those APIs. And the whole point of this is that because you always have to connect paying for your Kling subscription or your Binance or your free pick, whatever it is, in dollars, he's put it in such a way that you can actually pay in naira. So you can pay 5K, 10K, depending on how much credit you need to buy. And then you have access to it on one platform. But then again, none of all these things are Nigerian. But there's somebody also who has built a platform called Speech, where you can actually do text to speech. But then again, the speech is Nigerian languages. So, you can natural language to Hausa, to Igbo, to Yoruba. That's great. But we need to have that at scale, because if we're going to, for instance, we're going to the hinterlands to actually educate, people in, rural communities. It has to be something that we have built. And again, there's an opportunity also to safeguard our culture, safeguard everything that is peculiar to us. So I think, this is how I frame the situation, so that we kind of understand where we are. Again, data sets were not essentially put together, with Africans in mind. It's something that you have to consciously note when you are essentially prompting. So this, I'm going to start that conversation as we get along. Yeah.
Yes, I really like how you gave that full background and context to the conversation, because again, takeaways, data is key, right? As we were speaking, I was just thinking about the amount, if Malik had to go, how many videos would you shoot, right? The investment that is needed in there. So today, again, it just seems like we're still finding our feet, right? Maybe it's just those of us searching in there, trying to get some prompts that are unique to us. Um, Put in some prompts that are unique, that is helping to refine that data, right? But there's still a lot of work to be done. Ownership is also key, right, in the work that needs to be done. And so that leads me to, I know you do a lot of work on the film side, right? So it leads me to Amanda, that is on the music side, where um, music always typically moves fast in sort of adoption of some of this tech, right? That shapes the industry as a whole, right? And so for Amanda, I'm thinking, we've thought about data. Again, I don't know that data is even the issue on the music end, right? It's more of how do we, as rights owners, right, on these different platforms, how do we manage our, again, just wearing your legal hat, how do we manage and ensure that we're properly paid? How do we own um, our catalogs, license, whether it's on the film or on the music side? You can speak to that. How do we own? How do we manage our data? How do we protect it? Right? What filters do we need to have in place?
For it, it's still a data problem, even though it is legal related. We're talking about intellectual property rights here. We're talking about compensation. We're talking about different things, but it's still data, because the bedrock of it is people are beginning to ask questions. What materials are used to train this AI? Now, I think we've moved from the point of enjoying what AI can do to now questioning, how can AI do this? How did it get to this point? How can I be able to put in, sing sing this song and make it sound like Beyonce wrote it, and put in a few lyrics, and it gives you a song that you're going to sit down in your house and believe that Beyonce actually recorded and performed this song. And then begin to question yourself, okay, how was AI able to do this? What material was used? Now, the unfortunate thing is, to an extent, the guys in the Western world, obviously, they've been interacting with AI way longer than us here. They're a bit forward in that conversation. We've seen a lot of lawsuits around that, and a lot of the major labels, the UMGs, and these guys trying to ensure that they properly get licenses for the materials they're using to train the AI. But then what happens to our own catalogs over here? Because Obina mentioned that, the data set from African markets is still a bit running short, but then gradually they're catching up. gradually they're beginning to use our material. And beyond just using our material, if you look at the way our industry, the music industry is weirdly positioned in the sense that we just have the big three or the big four, and all of these guys have their hands in all the other levels. So automatically, a Maven catalog now belongs to UMG, which means if UMG licenses anything to any AI company, they get access to all of the catalogs that go through Maven, including African catalog. Similar to all of the deals that we have these artists sign with the Sony Music, with all of these guys. So whether we like it or not, we're already part of that. Now we're now bringing the question of how do these artists or how do people involved, whose rights are involved, how do they get compensated? The very sad thing is that our laws haven't even gotten the point of appreciating or recognizing that there's IP living around AI world. The law hasn't even caught up with AI. Talk more of IP, talk more of training data, talk more of protection of those data, not to talk of monetization of all of those data. So we're very much behind when it comes to that. I'm believing that as we move forward, there'll be a bit of a clarification. But I think a huge part of it plays down to data in the sense of metadata, because even if tomorrow we solve the problem and we end up getting compensation, who gets compensated? The metadata situation in Nigeria and Africa is still a bit messy in the sense that even the CMOs are struggling to identify who are the full contributors to an actual song to properly compensate all of them when they receive royalties. Not to talk more of when we now eventually get in line to getting or receiving royalties for materials used to train this AI. So in the legal space of things, I think things are still very, very muddy. That's one. Second part, from a legal point, we are still playing catch up. For example, I had some agreements that I sent out to some actors for a production I was working on. And I put in there just for the sake of seeing if the actors were going to push back that the company had the right to use your name, your likeness, and all of this to create like AI materials, or for maybe marketing or pushing the movie, or even sometimes completion of the movie. And I can tell you that if we share those contracts to 15 actors, only 2 actors push back. The rest signed it blindly. I don't know whether they spoke to a lawyer. I don't know if they didn't speak to a lawyer, but they just signed it and moved forward. For me, it's good because then if tomorrow the company I'm protecting or I'm providing services for want to do an AI trailer of the movie, they have the rights to do that. Nobody is going to tell them, oh, you did not collect this right for me. But then it makes you begin to think that it's either these guys are not consulting lawyers or we're still playing catch up to realize the potential and how much we're giving away when it comes to intellectual property in the AI space. Do you get? So we're still very far from the conversation, but there's a gold mine there that we're all sitting on. Gold mine on the part of compensation when it comes to training materials. Gold mine on compensation of when your music is used in even an AI video. You will see some AI videos, all these TikTok AI videos. They have a way of just like holding your chokehold and you just keep looking for the next part and next part and next part, and you're watching it and maybe you notice that they feature in Nigerian music. What happens? Or on the DSP point of view, you listen to a music and you can almost swear in your head that this is this artist's song, but it's not this artist that uploaded this song, and it's not sounding like this artist, but the beats and everything sound like this artist. On a normal day, we should be able to structure payment. But even if we don't do it, the unfortunate thing is that we don't have the laws that it's even going to push us to do it. So us doing it or not doing it will be out of our own terms and conditions. Do we want to regularize this? Do we want to be among the game changers in the industry to then put this forefront and then start compensating? So is a lot when it comes to legal space. The protection of IP when it comes to material, the protection of IP when it even comes to your name, your likeness, images that could be used, the protection of your coins to ensure that at the end of the day, when your materials are put out or when your materials are being pushed in different markets or used in different medium, you're getting earnings. But I want to believe that sooner or later we're going to get them.
Thank you for sharing that, Amanda. Yes, we, again, some of the things that you've mentioned still comes back to again ownership. Ownership for us as Africans. What do the holders have? Um, where is the space where place for authenticity, right? Where's the place for culture? Can anybody just off original content derive AI content without what's been done, right? What's been done on the back end or on these platforms that protects the artist or that positions them well economic wise, right? Do they get money? Is royalty diluted, right? Because that's another thing a conversation I was having recently with someone in the film space, say YouTube is now a menace in terms of just how the algorithm has shifted things for them, for players, for creators, right? And so again, how are we thinking about it? I'm coming back to Stella, right? Is this something that as a founder you found to struggle with? Where how are you thinking about it as a creative um, in terms of putting out your content or putting out content for your clients, right? That you help to create some of these stories.
Okay, so can you come again with the question?
In terms of AI, just the dilution of original content, right? Um, how the royalty that come with it. Again, just using YouTube as an example. Where do your how do you protect your content, and where does you getting all of the economic value you're supposed to get for your work, right, come to play without any dilution on that platform, for example.
Okay, so I'm just trying to fully understand the question before I answer it. Um, my brain is kind of like trying to work so hard right now.
Okay.
But please,
So what I want
yes,
to really again, I know you build content for. I believe you build content for your clients, right?
yes,
Yes, and they typically always have to upload somewhere, right, on a platform.
yes.
Yes, and so the
Mm-hmm.
struggle today we are having is on these different platforms, whether it's music or film, um, is dilution. People just using AI to regurgitate original content.
Yeah.
Is this something that you found to be a challenge, right? Is this something that has affected any capacity?
Personally, we've not really struggled with it because whatever we are using, whether it's maybe Suno to generate background music or whichever platform, the sound effects and all that, we make sure that we own it 100%. So with Suno, you could use the $10 plan to just have ownership rights so that you won't even be, maybe you upload something on YouTube, a particular video on YouTube that you've edited and all that. Because I think a couple of months back they were taking down a lot of AI channels, and there are a couple of people that I know that their YouTube automation is not child's play. So they had put in a lot of efforts, but then one thing or the other, their channel would be taken down or monetize. I mean, they would lose monetization. So one thing I try as much as I can to do whenever I'm working on clients' work is to make sure that we own every single thing, right? From the background music, use the Suno $10 plan, you get a lot. Even on the use the $10 plan, you have ownership rights to that particular stuff, because anything can actually happen. So it's best to just create every single thing by yourself, knowing fully well that you own the rights to it. So yeah, and just basically keeping like keeping records of every single thing. So if they try to you lose monetization at some certain point, it will be easier to appeal because you have those documents prepared and all that. So yeah, that's just it.
Okay. I'm coming back. Thank you for sharing that. I'm coming back to Amanda, where um, on AI generated content um, and how it complicates IP tracking across these different markets. You work with different markets on the continent. What frameworks are there that creative executives can establish to secure? I know it's hard work to secure and again ensure fair revenue distribution. I know you're in charge of music and licensing, so can you share?
I don't think a framework exists per se. Like I said, I believe that each platform or each company interacting with AI related or AI generated content has just decided to create their own terms and condition, especially in the African market, because African countries haven't, no country yet. The only guys that have tried to map out a bit of rules and regulation and laws around AI is the Westerners in US, and I think in some EU countries around transparency and all of that. But in Africa, it's still a blur. So what everyone interacting with such content has come to the conclusion is to create more of an internal framework. So if we're looking at Ndundo now, for example, Ndundo has allowed to the extent where tomorrow, if we find out that maybe it's illegal for you to put up certain content, as far as it's not infringing on an original work that we are aware of, we allow that platform, or sorry, we allow that content to stay on the platform for the sake of showing off your creativity and for the sake of, so it basically, you can't come out tomorrow to claim to be an artist or want to earn like an artist. But if you're looking at it as from the industry point of view, we haven't even come close to start putting a framework around it. Again, not to seem like a messenger of bad news and just hinging on things that are not working. But when it comes to receiving royalties, we haven't even solved our cross border issues with royalties. Like
True.
we still have artists struggling to collect money from music being played in other African countries. We still have CMOs that are not yet interacting with each other or have cross-border agreements where maybe a Samro in South Africa can collect from artists, can collect money for Nigerians over there and then remit the money to an MCSN here. Or MCSN can collect and remit to Capaso. That hasn't even fully happened. So it's more like all man to your own, not to talk of AI. So I think if I'm being honest from an industry point of view, we are still at the point of each company mapping out what the framework should look like. And it's going to always keep changing because
Mm.
we are still we're still learning the full capacity of what AI can do. For now, we can identify AI music. I think everyone in this room, when you hear an AI music, you know that this is possibly an AI music. But time will come where you will not be able to tell it apart just by listening. So that's the moment where everybody has subconsciously agree to this without wanting to open their mouth and say that we need to also rely on AI to catch AI music, whether we like it or
Mm.
not. We need to
Absolutely.
create kind of a tech or an AI tool, an API setup that can pick and differentiate music. This music is AI because we've tried the transparency angle, and unfortunately, Africans are not naturally transparent like that for them to come and tick, okay, yes, this is an AI music that I'm uploading because they realize that probably the platform is going to treat it a bit different. So at the moment, there's no fixed framework, sadly, but we're always on the toe of adapting and evolving, at least at the moment where any of the territories that we're operating in starts to create some form of regulation or laws around it, then definitely we have to get in tune with that. But before that happens, we're just going to go with the industry standard. If tomorrow the music industry comes as a whole and say, oh, we want to create an AI regulation that this is how the industry is going to interact with AI content, I don't know the possibility of that. Then we in the industry is just we're just going to adapt. But for now, the framework is very independent of the companies.
Thank you for sharing that, Amanda. I totally, I can totally understand, especially when you're speaking about again just the interactions between collection, right, of royalties. Even within same country, you find that there are some private. We discovered recently that there are some private collectors who have private companies collecting their own royalties and don't rely on the industry body as well. So it's a good conversation that we still need to keep on having. So I'm coming back to Obi now, right? Just again to get an understanding of what happens on the film side. Is this a struggle, right? Just tracking. Yes, is this a struggle on the film side?
Um, well, everything in life is a struggle, right? So I think that's first principles. But So it's a bit fractured in terms of how it's playing out. So globally, I'm sure Stella will know this, and Amanda will know this as well. If you There are two camps, especially when we're speaking to film and television, any type of content. If you post something as AI, or you see a post, very great looking video, probably generated in Kling or a sit dance or run what have you, you would see two types of comments. AI slop, and it's looking great. Oh my God, you are destroying the planet. You are all you know is you don't have any talent. You are this, and then some other people are pretty. Oh, great! I see your framing. I see the power of your prompt. So there are two camps. I was watching. Let me tell a joke. I was watching there's this animation. This series of animations I watch on Instagram about film life, film sets. They are, it I can't remember the name of the page now. So anyway, it's 2D animation, and they could put together a lot of interesting scenarios that just showcase what film life is around for people who are traditional filmmakers, correct? So this guy was trying to get a shot of ink, essentially ink like colors interacting. So he wore like a hazmat suit, set up lights, set up like key lights, spotlights, everything, and then was pouring the paint and was pouring it. I was looking for the perfect shot, and then he gets it, and he was shooting like 200 frames per second, a slow motion. So he gets the footage, he gets it right after several attempts, and he rushes to the editing bay to show his editor. And I said, finally, I got it. And then his editor looks at him, oh, this is great. And then he settles down to work, and then he looks at him and says, what prompt did you use? And then it ends because so basically it just paints a picture of the parallel universe. A lot of filmmakers around the world, they're divided because they don't know exactly what this technology will do, and it's centered around that one conversation. Is it going to take away my job? So, and as somebody who is actually a trained artist, like I went to school to read arts, like fine arts, and someone who has practiced, somebody who has worked pretty much, in film, in photography, in television. I understand what it is. I actually draw. I grew up drawing, drew comics, painted, all that stuff, and I understand. And when I see an illustrator from, say, Poland attacking and denigrating this piece of, wonderfully done piece of AI work, I get it, because the guy is saying to himself, I spent maybe a better part of my life understanding the tenets of illustration and drawing. How dare you, who is just some sort of hobbyist, come to this space and with a couple of prompts, you're doing the same thing. We can't exist in the same world. So I hate you, I hate you, I hate you. So you get a lot of that kind of thing. And then for film, let me give an example. Martin Scorsese, everybody knows him. Martin Scorsese, the Goodfellas, Goodfellas, all that stuff. Great, great established film director. And he was having a conversation with the guys from Flux, from Flux Max, Flux Pro. They are like a generative AI company. They had this model called Flux. For people who are deep in the space, they would know. And then they were showing him examples of how in the what they call pre-visualization process of filmmaking. What does that mean? So before you make a film, you're doing your screenplay, you're looking at storyboards, you're looking at short lists, essentially concept building of your film. You can see what the film can look like. You're building the world and stuff like that. Production designers use it, directors use it when they're trying to discuss with their cinematographers, etc. So basically, they were using this Flux essentially model to create storyboards, and then he would say something, and then they were prompted. So a traditional filmmaker now turns that to content to say, oh, Scorsese has now sold all of us out. We believed in him, he was an icon, but now he's a sellout. In fact, and the guy goes on to say, oh, that he found out that he was on the verge of bankruptcy, and then he needed money to so all these things, So the point here is that, and what I've always tried to tell, I'm that guy who's going to go into an Instagram fight, who will go into an X fight. I'm that guy. If you're lucky enough to come across some of my comments on, I think that it's really And I don't blame both sides, to be very honest, because I've been on the same spectrum of both sides as a trained artist and somebody who's experimenting with technology. I think it's really a question of nuance and also understanding the situation. You know, I tell people the framing of a question is more important than the question. How a question is framed is more important than the question itself. So most times, a lot of these things are not framed properly, you know, so so it's a question of people on the other side need to understand that AI, especially is used and it's used in the creative process, can be used for several things. Now, when you say AI for what? AI for somebody who is working as a post-production sound designer. It helps him. Somebody who's working in cleaning up audio, you know, he's recorded his sound, and probably when they were on set, there was a generator in the background that was making so much noise, you know, and all if they look at all their audio channels and their problems. Before, you would have to have hired some sort of superstar audio engineer who has worked some of the best tools and you spend time cleaning up WAV files. But now I can run that through as something as cheap and as affordable as CapCut Pro. I run that through and I run it in noise remover and it's completely gone. You know, so that's AI. But somebody somewhere will think, oh, AI is destroying the universe and stuff like that. But you see how it helps, you know, in the creative process. Now, VFX and special effects, you know, visual effects, VFX, and CGI, computer generated imagery. There are companies like Industrial Light and Magic and Weta Studios. These are the biggest VFX companies in the universe. And sometimes when a film is made, you can spend 2 more years just doing visual effects and CGI. Like you think about the Avengers movies, you think about the DC movie studios and stuff like that. It takes time. And then when you look at the end credits, you can see probably almost 200 people working on few shots that last a couple of seconds. Now we're in a situation where with models like Runway Aleph, with Kling Omni, you can do this stuff just by having the right prompts. So it has what I've also been, it has supercharged our filmmaking. Now, because I tell people, you need to look at AI as a tool that enhances your productivity, as a tool that helps you get from A to B. And like Stella said, you know, you have to look at this thing as something that is a co-creator, not necessarily the brain. And I tell people when I have a lot of these panel sessions and I have sessions, like if you AI, what is it called? Artificial intelligence. It's a subset of an intelligence, of human intelligence. We are the intelligence. The intelligence comes from us. We write the stories. And I tell people this: if you were not a great writer or you're not a great director, AI is not going to make you a great director. Going to chat GPT and throwing in stuff and that's not what makes you a great director. You must understand the basics of storytelling, that a story has a beginning, a middle, and an end, that there's a first act, a second act, and a third act, that the character has to be well formed, whether it's a female character, an ensemble of characters, or a male character, that goes through a challenge and then at the end of the day gets a reprieve or overcomes. That's what makes a story, you know. So if you don't understand, it's a craft. If you don't understand those things, AI is not suddenly going to make you a better storyteller. No. And I tell people that when the dust settles with all this AI stuff, it's only people who, you know, can tell stories properly. And let me say this: if you look like you know, when Amanda was saying that, you know, she watches, you know, she catches some of all this stuff on TikTok, and she just goes and goes and goes. Human beings, the audience, don't care about how you are telling a story. They only care about the story. So let me explain this. Storytelling is so powerful that it's not about whether you're filming on film or you're filming or you're doing content. What is important is that a story, this whole thing around a particular incident or this particular happenstance, someone is able to weave it together and they tell it to you. What am I saying? I don't have to go to IMAX in Lekki Phase 1 to watch it. If Finn has great gist, did you see that guy that came that was walking like as if he didn't have a bomb bomb? Suddenly, that's a great story, and I'm invested. You get my point? My point is being able to hold human attention. It's a skill. You get my point? And that's why, you know, people talk about ancient African storytelling where we gathered under trees and then we spoke, you know. My point is a story is a story. The audience doesn't really care whether you've shot it with an IMAX camera that cost $1 billion or $1 billion, or whether you're essentially just gisting with your friend. A story is a story. What is important for us is is to understand the basics of storytelling, know how to captivate an audience, and then the technology is a bonus that becomes something that you can use to amplify. So what I've always told filmmakers is you need to see how in your storytelling process or your post-production process how AI can help you achieve your end. Like for instance, I can tell you practical examples. In December, myself, Malika, and one other guy from Nerves from our community worked on Colors of Fire, Nia Kimalayan's film that went to cinema. So the if you had, I don't know if anybody saw that film, but the flashbacks, a lot of all some of when the Portuguese came, and a bit of things that were a bit of in the dream realm. We created that stuff and that's put together with it. So there's so many ways. Now, and what I've always said to people is filmmaking is expensive. You know, if you look at, for instance, if you're going to buy, Stella, who's a filmmaker, will understand. If you're going to buy the cheapest camera, Black Magic 4K, whatever, at the very least, you're going to be spending $2,000, and you have to buy lenses, and you have to buy lights, you have to buy C stands, you have to buy. By the time you put all that stuff together, we're talking northward of $10,000. This is just to do a short film, or to you get my point. But now we're talking about technology where, and this is the most part, and this is why I'm always emphasizing this, and this is why my movement is so important to me, is the fact that somebody who has an idea for a story, who lives in a very, very far remote location in the north or the west or the east, can use AI to bring his story to life. And again, it's the empowerment of everyday people to tell the stories they've always wanted to tell. So at the end of the day, it's really a delicate balancing act where
Yeah.
people who have actually figured it out, the AI side of things, have been able to successfully bring into their filmmaking, and it's supercharging them. They don't have to spend so much money. They can do what they call set extension. So Fien is filming, she's filming somewhere. She only has a budget to film in a certain location, but then again, she wants to shoot a very wide shot. I take a photograph of that place, I take it into Nano Banana Pro and expand it, and it gives me this wide, so that's what they call set extension. So these are the things that it supercharges. So I think it's a question of, for people who are established, having an open mind to see how the technology can actually help you achieve, at least from a film perspective, what you want to achieve, that kind of thing. And again, most importantly, to see it as a tool. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. You've been very detailed. Thank you. I think it's important that we have a lot of work to do, whether it's on the film or on the music side. So it leads me to my last question. I'll start with Stella, right? And question is same question for everybody, right? Goes back to what the session is about. Who wins in the AI stage? Right? We've spoken about how there's a balancing act, finding what parts of the value chain where you use AI to make your processes faster and cheaper, right? But how do you think about culture? How do we think about the talent part of it, right? How do we manage talent? Do we need to, there's certain areas in film or music, or as somebody that works on uses AI predominantly to build talent, to build skills? Are there things that we should be doing if we're currently in the space as a musician or filmmaker, um, that will help us, again, just be ready for the new age, right? Help us talent wise, help us to make more money. Talent,
Okay.
Stella, I hope you got that.
Yeah, I got that question. Um, I really, really enjoyed Obina's answers. His answers, I was just nodding my head. I was just saying, right, that's right. But yeah, to answer your question, we have to train them. We that we are pioneers in, when I say pioneers, I think pioneer is the right word in this context. We can actually train them. So one thing I try as much as I can is to teach the people that are looking for this information, teach them, because not everybody knows how to, in as much as they have a story to tell or they have an idea to bring to life, so many of them they don't know how to package it. So it's left for us that actually know how to package it to help them tell these stories. And I feel like that would really, really help if we could organize, even not just at an individual level. If companies, organizations are looking to train their marketing team, bring in somebody like us, maybe because I've done this for, just a few companies that know the importance of AI, because so many companies are still, doing the old school type of thing, but a few of them that understand the impact of artificial intelligence have called us, okay, what would it take to train our marketing team to do this? So if more companies can actually incorporate that into their um framework, that would be great. And then organizing trainings and webinars just like this to train people not just how to monetize, but first of all learning the skill. Because you know 4 years ago, three I'm saying 4 years ago, 3 years ago, this was a skill that did not exist. I'm coming from a career development background. I did I'm still doing, however, our Dutch studios is at the forefront right now. Career development, we did CV, we do CV and all that, LinkedIn optimization. So but I literally saw the light basically, and I had to transition to this field because I saw the impact that it would make, and how it's possible to go from the idea to execution within days and not even months or years and whatnot. So I feel like if we should educate, we that we have the knowledge that we do have right now, that we should educate, put out more educational content across whichever social channel, whichever distribution channel that we have out there, just telling people about artificial intelligence, the pros and the cons, and then basically educating them and all that. So yeah, that's how I feel that we could share that knowledge with more people.
Yeah, I agree with you, Stella, because Africa will always tend to be the last one to join
Yeah,
the movement,
very
right?
underserved.
So yes. So again, we have data issues, we have infrastructure issues, whether it's power or water or data centers, right? And so we need to work harder to train ourselves and just upskill. It's upskill that I hear you say. So I'll go to Amanda. How
Yeah.
are you thinking about?
So, Brie, can you repeat the question? I didn't get it at first.
So the question is on, just to wrap up, right, on the topic,
Yeah,
culture
yeah,
or algorithm, right? How should we as Africans be thinking about it going forward? Today, we are, again, depending on who you speak to, some people like AI. It makes their work cheaper. It
mm,
makes them do things faster. It means they can come into an industry that um, has maybe that is gatekeeping and they can navigate things faster, right? But
yeah.
there's also the part where there's culture we need to protect. So what do we need to do um, on our end, right? What do we need to do? Who wins? How do we need to protect
Yeah.
ourselves? So how do we need to look at it as Africans?
I would say one thing first is let's not fight it. I think a huge part of our strength has been around, oh, we don't want AI. AI is going to come and take our job. AI is going to do this. Or something Ubina said, which is something that I've been hammering on for a while when he was talking about filmmaking. Basically, if you look at VFX and SFX and all of those things, they don't used to exist before. For you to do editing, it was manual work. A tech happened, technology happened, something happened, and we evolved and got to this point. So why are we now here and we're struggling to adopt to what or adapt this for the future? So I would say first and first, let's not fight it or struggle. I think the fight and the struggle is the reason why we are not leveraging it the way we should. Why we're waiting for someone to come and put this legal protection and real guards around it. We're waiting for someone to come and tell us what to do with our data sets. Let's not, in my opinion, make the mistake we made kind of when it comes to film distribution, where waited for the saviors of the Netflix and the Amazon to come. Let's try to build something for ourselves now. So this, it will be first to the lawyers, my fellow lawyers, policymakers. Let's sit down and first understand what it means. Like, let's put people that actually understands what AI means in the forefront to advise us on how to. It's a different thing that let's put out a law that is not compact enough, but at least it's a first step towards regulating, a first step towards putting some bit of protection around it. That would be the first thing. Second thing I'll say is, as I don't know whether it's just me, but advice to all Africans, let's stop playing with AI. I think we are subconsciously selling some data to AI without knowing, just because we're playing around and interacting with it. So let's start thinking about AI as a business partner. Let's start thinking about AI as a counterpart that is here. And if one slip up comes up, it can literally take over your business. And that is for a fact. So let's start thinking ownership. I think that was the first thing Fanny said when we joined the conversation at first. Ownership. How can we own this space? What can we do? How can we be in charge of data set that is needed to train the LLMs? What can we do to ensure that if possible we create our own AI and show the world what an AI with proper African data could look like, what it means if you put in, I think Obina mentioned putting in a prompt that you need you want to see a video of an 11-year-old boy walking down the street, and the feedback you're going to get or the result you're going to get will be an African based result, not a US. Or I think it was a joke during Global Creative Summit last year that someone said once you go on AI and put, oh, you want an African man, the next thing they'll put kente uniform or clothes on the person, fair or dark. That is always like their attribute to what an African looks like. So I think because of how fresh and how unknown and how they haven't really like dug their fingers deep yet into African data sets, it gives us a fresh ground to actually own it. On it. It's nice to see what Stella is doing. It's nice to see what Obina is doing here. It's nice to see. I think still outside or during the Global Creative Summit last year, I came across two or three other founders around AI space that are trying to like create their own thing. So it's nice to see this. But like Stella said, we need to now educate the rest of the public that this is not a joke. This is not just something that you use to try out your hand to see if I twist the Messi Chinwo song, can it sound like a club song? It's not it. This is something, this is a system, this is a tech that you can actually use to make life easier for you. It's something you can use to give yourself more opportunity to make more money. And if you flip it, you're scared that AI might take your own job, but AI cannot operate on its own. So why don't you adapt? I'm a lawyer by training, but then being at Tundunda, I've started doing a lot of data analysis. And during the data analysis, I'm now learning a bit more about AI engineering, format engineering, and all of that. Is not what I normally, that's not what I was trained to do. But then I've come to acknowledge the fact that AI is here to stay. So it's better I get in tune with it and get ahead of it, because at the end of the day, someone controls AI. So that would be my advice to the creatives. Now, for the music guys, for the executives out there, the truth about it is that whether we like it or not, they're still going to train with our music. Whether we like it or not, there's demand for African music. And as far as there's a demand for African music amongst humans, then there'll be a demand for African music with AI. So the earlier we get ahead of the curve, we don't even need to wait for the African countries to start, or each countries or territory to start forming their own rules and regulation. We have to come in together and say, okay, this is what we are setting as a standard, an industry standard. We are not going to execute or sign any agreement without this. The CMOs now should be charged to start collecting revenues and start collecting some back end royalties each time they hear music being used, whether it's in an AI setting or a non AI setting. All of those things we have to come together and both of it down to properly put some regulation in the space, because it's getting out of hand. Beyond getting out of hand, it also has shown us over the last period of months and years that AI is here to stay for a long time. So what we can do is see how we can put it to work, protect ourselves, protect our bag, and ensure that we are part of the history, not the way it has always been on the us watching from the sideline, but we are part of what is being done in AI space, and we're controlling the narrative, we're controlling how the culture is being used, and ensuring that if the culture is being used, then every African creator, everyone that is contributing to that culture is earning and making their money back.
So some data infrastructure happened to me. Some infrastructure challenge. Can you hear me?
There's a bit of an echo, windy. No,
Yeah.
check your mic source if you can.
Any better?
Yeah, I think it's better now. But you're frozen. I think you're, yeah, you're frozen.
All right. Thank you, Amanda. I think I don't know if he are you good to go? Okay, give me a minute.
Oh, sorry about that. Some network again. I think it's the rain. I hope everybody can hear me now.
Yeah.
I missed a lot of what Amanda said, but thank you, Amanda. Thank you for thank you for sharing. Um, I will let Obina go on to take the floor now. Can you hear me, Obina?
Yes,
Hope
very
I'm
well.
still
I can see you.
there.
Too. Welcome back. All right.
Okay.
So, yeah. So the subject matter of today, who wins in the AI race, algorithms or culture? What I'll say is, culture is the source code for all human innovation. Culture is the source code for all human innovation. And let me explain to you with this example. The algorithm can show you 10,000 images of a masquerade. Culture will tell you why the masquerade matters. What is happening is that, what does the algorithm do? It calculates, it makes predictions based on information, it computes and gives you all that information, based on the demands of what it thinks people wants to see, and it's a summation of essential activities and that kind of thing. So it's But then again, culture dictates why a thing matters. The struggle that a musician goes through before they compose. Those tiny little things. Why a person speaks in a certain way, why it matters to us. Those nuances of culture are things that cannot be replicated. Are things that are so ingrained in humanity. So at the end of the day, the algorithm is important for essentially hovering and essentially manipulating a digital world where advertisers, consumers really want to make a dent, essentially. But what is important is that we culture puts us in a situation where we understand those things, why where we can zoom out and understand why those things are like that, the nuances. So I think um, we cannot let the algorithm win because it's not a true reflection of who we are and what we are. It could be, and it could give us scenarios of what we think we want in terms of so you look at consumerism and look at how the world works in terms of bringing something to your attention every day. But culture essentially is a mirror through which we see who we are and what we represent. So I think in the final analysis, I think that if you look at it, so if you look at what's also happening, people are creating for the algorithm. People are saying, I want this to trend, I want that to trend. And because they take what they see, so it's almost like a cyclical loop. So I see what is happening on this podcast. I want to start my own podcast to talk about the same issues. And then, but then again, we're forgetting the reason why those things matter. Like I tell people, when the essence of the thing is lost, abuse is inevitable. We need to understand why, ask ourselves why these things matter. And those questions come from a cultural standpoint. So I think it's a question of number one, culture has to be the backbone and the basis for how we build out what we put out in the algorithm. So I think it's a question again, that equilibrium of sorts. We need, like I said, we need the algorithm because some people get paid their salaries based on the activity of the algorithm is important. But then again, it is important that we're grounded and rooted in culture because it is the origin of everything. I hope that helps. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, it does help. Thank you, Obina. It's something that again has been there's a discussion in the ecosystem today as to even with skits, right? Is it should we follow the algorithm as simple as skits as comedy, right? Or should we be thinking about the real story, right? What relates to people, or what people can relate to, right? So I'll go quickly to questions again. If you have more questions, please put in the chat. There's this one that is, I think it's for Amanda. It is for Amanda. In the absence, I hope Amanda can still hear me. In the absence of estates in the world, how do we compensate traditional communities who are custodians of authentic stories? Hard question.
Very
Whether
hard question. Very hard question. It actually takes me back to a paper that I did. I think that was around 2019, 2020, where I was trying to figure out the intellectual property rights around folklore, because it's very easy for us to go and adapt stories around community, lifestyle, and traditional stories, and then tell it on the big screen. And then, is there a paper trail? Is there an intellectual property chain of title? Is there need for us to obtain licenses? If there is, who do we obtain the licenses from? Is it from the ruler of the kingdom? Is it so the IP law, to the best of my ability, copyright law to an extent provided for that, but it wasn't compact enough to play in the current society that we are in now, where it's possible to retell these stories. So when it comes to that traditional compensation, I wish I had a straightforward answers to this is how it's being done, but sadly, I there is none, because then the problem now is who is the right person to be compensated. And even down to, for example, music, film. I think film to an extent is a bit more structured, but when it comes down to music to an extent, that's the regular question. Okay, when we get this money, who is the right person? So most times the conclusion is better we just sit on the money and not pay it than we pay it to someone, and then someone else comes up tomorrow and then sue us for it, and we've paid, and the person we've paid, we can't find the person to say come and remit the money back. So unfortunately, it's a very, very muddy aspect. I think, yeah, it's a very the most I can say at the moment is a muddy aspect. I don't have a straightforward. This is how it's been done, to the best of my ability, as to compensation for traditional stories, especially when it's down to maybe something that can be identified as folklore.
yeah,
So let me add to what Amanda said. I think really it's around. So basically, I think this question about monetization, and I think it's really around um, understanding number one, um, what you want to do with the content that you're creating, and is there an avenue for you to sell the content? So because it's really nuanced. Because what I'll say these days is that the traditional models are not, they're not what it used to be. So let me give you an example. So there is a YouTuber who just made a film. Amanda, I don't know if you know the story, but he made a film about an elevator. Two people were stuck on an elevator. It's like the film is about 15 minutes. Now, if you recall what Stella was saying around the fact that there are really no new stories, right? So these guys are looking for anywhere they can find new stories. So that's one. So there's another filmmaker also on YouTube who makes a horror film. The studio picks that up, and then they go into this, to make the film properly and invest. I think the investment in the film was like maybe $1 million, 900K. But the film has gone on to make um almost at least about almost $300 million. So, and which is, it's not studio IP, it's not a regular friend. So my point is, I think what is important is that for people to create, people to, if you have a story, don't be afraid to tell the story, find a way to make the stuff. Because when you get found out, and you have to find ways to put out yourself. And what I'll tell people is that I know everybody, like, Stella was talking about some YouTube channels that were taken down. Start something, whether it's TikTok or something, just be present, online. Another thing you can also do is, and it's what people are doing now, you can be a self-starter. You can go start a website, invest some money, put your stuff out there, start with your community, and say, okay, this stuff is here. It's going to be 100 naira per episode or whatever. My point is, you need to start somewhere and build something, because nobody is coming with $1 million check to give you. That's the reality. So if you're building something, be diligent in building that thing, so that where they say, what they say about success, opportunity, meeting, preparation, and stuff like that. You need to be in that place where build something, have something that you can show, and then when the opportunity comes, it comes. Because the models are not like, they don't work. You think, oh, I'm going to be a musician and then I'm going to have a record label and then going to, I don't know, I'm gonna the figures. So if you look at DSPs, it's like 0.000 point something cents per stream. It's crazy. So you probably, for you to even do anything that scratches the surface, we're talking about 1 million streams to start with, to start before you can start. Do you get my point? So it's tough, but what I'll say is find a way to have a unique voice. And sometimes it's kind of like saying finding your purpose. But if you find a unique voice in terms of the kind of content that you're making, I feel that one day you make that breakthrough, but you need to start with something, and yeah, it's tough. It's tough there because I understand that people are making a living with this stuff. People are trying to make some sort of livelihood. But then again, it's not going to be easy. If you chosen your life to be a creative, it comes with challenges. But then again, the ones who see through are the ones that usually make it. So I just wanted to add this 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you, Obina. Thank you for sharing that. Next question, I think it's you can help with that as well. Who is the owner? AI. I think again, this is in terms of the content. AI tools, or the human of IP. Who is the owner of IP?
So
AI. Yeah.
is this for Amanda?
Okay. Well, both of you can take a stab at it.
This is a legal question, so I'll let Amanda go first, then I'll support.
On IP.
So Amanda, I said I'll let you go
Can you
first, then
say I'm not sure maybe there's a lag.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. You want to take
Um,
it?
so the question is it the prompter or the promptee or the prompter or who exactly is
You
the
know
owner
the content.
of the of the AI material? There's no straightforward question. There's no straightforward answer to this. Again, this is something that's been debated and is still being debated, and this is where it seems like I'm repeating same thing, but this is where if there was a proper regulation, if the copyright law, Copyright Act has clarified this, I think that is the best way we'll know for sure who the law or who the government or who is identified as the owner. So at the moment, I can only adapt what the US office, Copyright Office has to an extent, try to put down, which is if you've shown significant contribution to the prompt, not that you just put in a simple prompt and said, oh, do this, and it gave you something. Like there's something significant that was contributed and you've engineered this and you create it, then the person that put in the prompt owns it. Now, if it's a simple, oh, sing a song or re-sing um Burna Boy's song and make it sound like a Christian song, then you don't own it. At that point, it's now between Burna Boy that owns the underlying material and the company that ran the prompts. Because mind you, there's a lot that is going into it. You've put in a prompt, there's a machine that is interpreting the prompt, there's someone that put in the materials that the machine is using to interpret the prompt, and then the company that puts it out. So there are many layers to it. So US office so far, they're the only guys that have kind of tried to craft it for us. So I think that would be the best attainable answer here. That in a situation where, for example, let's say you're a music producer and you have probably created a few beats or you use AI to create a few beats and you fine tune it to a point, then you can say the beat belongs to you. But if you're let me not even leave it to a layman, if you're a creative that is playing around and did something and between you and yourself you know that the output of this has shown that no much work was put behind it, then you can't claim ownership to it. There's a lot of, and this is where I mentioned initially about us knowing the data that is used to train this the machine. So at the end of the day, if it's a Burna Boy's song that was used, Burna Boy can be attributed as an owner of this. So that what then happens is, let's say the example I gave initially, I told AI to create a Burna Boy song to make it sound like a Christian music. Then if I'm looking at layers of people that owns this song, I'm there, Burna Boy is there, and the company that has created AI is there. I can't say I own it a lot alone because a lot went into it. So I think that's the best I can give at the moment as a response to it.
Yeah, so I think I mean, she's very spot on in terms of how the US legal system defines this thing. So that what I would say is, in as much as possible, learn whoever is listening, learn prompt engineering. So your details, what people have been, prompt engineering is a very big thing. People sell prompts, there are prompts for sale, there are prompts that have become that you can actually even turn into IP, intellectual property. So because it's a systematic, and what's interesting is that as you experiment, you never can tell what the output will be. So the gem you have is the set of words and commands you put together. That you can trademark, that you can copyright, that you can actually turn into something because it's yours. It comes from you. So that's what I will say. There are a lot of gray areas. Even I think the World Intellectual Property Organization of the World is just trying to figure out a lot of things around this technology. So I think it's Amanda's response is spot on. So, but for the creator, invest your timing in building prompts, understand, because that's how you actually push the model to produce the very best of output. Thank you.
Yeah, prompt engineering is something that there's so many courses online now um, that help with that. So many ads. This final question, I think, is for you. I think for you, Obina. The question everyone is wrestling with is what happens with that long list of talents. The fear of being unemployed. So basically, that contributed to VFX.
Fantastic. So I'm going to say this: you won't lose your job to AI. You will lose your job to somebody who knows AI. Simple.
Yeah.
You will lose your job to somebody who knows. So what I've always said, like I'm going to use myself as an example. I always like to use myself again because I've used, I've been, like I said, I've been on both sides of the spectrum. I went to art school. I'm a trained artist. I draw, I paint, I take photographs, I do videography, I edit. At some point I used to do motion design. I compose music. I play the piano. I've been playing piano since 1995. I also use Suno. I've also used Flow Music. So I've told myself I must find every form of expression with technology, artistic expression, and push it to the max. That is how I've chosen to live my life. Even my work, I've brought AI to work. Thankfully, we're not an AI first company at Money Point. So it's something that I actually, even in marketing and what we do. So what I would say is, what was that question again? Remind me of details of that question. What was it again?
What will happen? Do we lose our jobs?
Yes. So jobs. I think that as whatever it is that you're doing, you must evolve. If you Google, what I'll say to people is just go and Google 50 jobs most likely to be lost to AI. You're going to see a lot of things there that might scare you. But if you adapt and evolve and then say, okay, in my area of specialization, how is AI going to affect it? And then you go out there and you learn. For instance, and I assume that if you are a cinematographer, for instance, a cinematographer is somebody who uses the camera to essentially capture images and works alongside a director, or director of photography or an actual film director. How can AI help my process? So basically, I get a script. So rather than essentially draw out shortlist by hand, I can take my script, I can look at the essential shots I want, feed that into a model, and then it gives me the shots. I can say, look, I want this particular shot. It's going to be shot with a 50 camera f1.2. It's going to be at the Dutch angle, and then next shot is going to be an overhead. So I can do all of that, and before I go to shoot, I already have my shots easily. And then when I'm on the field, I just set my camera and I do. That's how you can supercharge. If you are working in, whatever it is, how is AI going to change that process? I give an example. I remember when Timberland, everybody knows Timberland. For people who grew up in the 90s, he's probably one of the greatest, hip hop producers. And then he was one of the endorsers and brand ambassadors for Suno. See the contradiction there. But what people don't understand is that they were also trying to get the company itself was also trying to get an idea of what producers are looking for. So rather than go to Suno, like what Amanda has been explaining, so Suno AI is this really big popular music model. Papa Ute, all those covers they're all done with Suno. Now Suno understands that there's a lot of controversy around and a lot of issues around artists not essentially afraid that they're going to be extinct or stuff like that. So what they've done is they've expanded the model where you can compose essentially as a producer. So basically you compose music, and then like for instance, like this is I have a studio at home. This is literally, so I make music, so I can play something, take that wave file, take that idea, bring it into Suno, and further develop it. Now, what happens is that now the guys who make the model understand that, we don't just want you to not think, but with the studio, you can take, at a Suno studio, I can take a fragment of my own creation, something I've done, bring it and now expand it and give it new life. So you see how that technology has supercharged your creative process. Now, 5 years ago, we didn't have this. 6 years ago, two, three, in fact, 4 years ago, we didn't have this. But now, in fact, 3 years ago, 2 years, we didn't have this. But now it provides you an opportunity. So when you are thinking of, the monotonous nature of quantizing, doing all the stuff, all you need to do is you have the idea and you're able to give it a little bit, a microcosm of the idea, and then it expands it. This is how the technology helps us. So what I'll say for people who, the truth about it is that let's not kid ourselves. Some jobs, and please note the use of the word some jobs might be gone. Because I mean, look at it. Let's not kid ourselves. We're talking about the fourth industrial revolution. 100 years ago, 50 years ago, 60 years ago, 40 years ago, 30 years ago, people who were great typists were in high demand. Like I remember, yeah, in 1999, I was in first year, and I remember Ben, they used to have a lot of typing pools before we started introducing computers, right? So imagine somebody who could type, like maybe you could type 100 words per minute or whatever. When a computer comes, that skill is completely, what happened? All the typewriters, all gone. And so I tell people this. So imagine the a king in the 1800s. How was his picture taking? Or the 1700s? They got a painter, an artist painter that will sit down, his family will pose, and he will paint details, oil on canvas. And when the camera came in the early 1900s, what happened? One click of a shutter. What happened? It completely changed. But it doesn't necessarily mean that the final industry has changed. It's not a question of taste on whatever, My point is, as we move along with technology, certain things will change. But what is important is that you, as a creator, as a business person, as an entrepreneur, you need to change your mindset. You need to evolve with the times. So number one question is, in conclusion, how will AI affect my industry? Whether you are in legal, whether you're in accounting, whether you are in social work, whether you are a creator, how will it affect? And then you go and learn those skills that are requisite, that are important to what you are doing using AI. So imagine if you went to your employer and said, "Oh, excuse me, sir, excuse me, sir, I've realized that AI is going to impact our work. I've gone ahead to learn how AI is going to impact our work, and I have done X, Y, Z." That is the kind of employee that employers are looking for, where you are thinking 10 steps ahead, that kind of, because you have embraced technology. I hope this helps. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Obina. I believe we've answered all the questions. I'll just do a quick wrap up. Again, just buttressing what you said, the last point, we need to adapt. There's no real, again, if you're hoping that you come to this conversation and they will say it's AI that is the winner or culture is the winner, newsflash, there's an integration happening, right? Um, is being adaptable, being able to see, shift your mindset to, okay, how best can I use this in my process, right? How best do I infuse this and still remain authentic? So we've learned that it's important that we stay adaptable, we stay flexible, we evolve, um, we stay authentic, right? We don't just swallow or take on AI as a whole, right? Used to help smooth out the process. It's important that also, again, the data thing is a challenge, right? The fact that we don't have a lot of African voices on the major AI infrastructure that we're sort of using. And so we need to be able to help build that data, help build the data on those tools that we use. And so it's important to the ecosystem as well. So it makes our work easier. And the last thing is ownership. Um, ownership. How do we ensure that we still own? Right. Stella mentioned that she ensures that she's creating the work that she owns, uh, or has paid for the rights to certain things, so that she doesn't have issues with whatever platform the work is being uploaded on, right? And ensures that it stays authentic and true to the rights holder. So thank you so much. Thank you, Stella. Thank you, Obina. Thank you, Amanda. I really appreciate you taking the time. Again, this series is part of just our ecosystem support to develop and just build knowledge, upskill, as we've all agreed to. Thank you so much, and have a
You're
wonderful
welcome.
evening.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. It was great to have you guys. See you, Stella. See you, Amanda. See you.
All right. Bye.
Bye,
Bye bye.
guys.